In CareHD, we have the concept of completing an appointment or having an appointment marked as incomplete. The concept of a completed or incomplete appointment is really a check and balance system to make sure that everything that is required of an appointment is being done. The requirements that we look for to mark an appointment as completed is that there's an appointment on the calendar for the day, there are charges on the ledger for the day, so the services that were rendered. I'm not talking about a payment on the ledger, I'm talking about the services that the patient received. Those charges must be on the ledger because we must notate what services the patient received. And a SOAP note has to be either finalized or marked as draft because we need the SOAP note completed with the appointment as well. So those three factors, the appointment, the charges, and the SOAP note, are what is required to consider an appointment as completed. Your office may have other definitions and requirements for a complete appointment, but those are the CareHD definitions, and those are the definitions that our features look for. When completing appointments, you have the option to manually mark an appointment as completed or have autocomplete turned on. To have autocomplete turned on, you have to navigate to your live location, settings, office configuration, autocomplete appointments. The autocomplete appointment feature will only work if on the day of the appointment, charges and SOAP note is entered or saved as draft from the SOAP note screen. So I have to be on any SOAP note screen. There has to be charges, so I can add charges either by clicking to the charges box and manually entering a charge, or if I have default charges set up on the patient's case, that will automatically pull over. So in this charges box, I didn't set a service. This patient has a default service and it pulled over automatically because there was a default service. So you have to have a service somehow, either by defaults or by manually adding a charge using the charges box. On patient chart mode, under the notes tab, that would look like this charges box. The same concept. If I click into it, I can manually add, or it will pull over from default charges. So this is where it's at on patient chart mode. This is what the charges looks like on provider or patient mode. So I have my charges, and then I have to have a SOAP note. I can either submit, which is finalizing the SOAP note, or saving as draft. But these two actions, the charges and the SOAP note, have to be submitted and saved, or saved as draft, from the SOAP note screen, any of the SOAP note screen, on the same date as the appointment. That is how an appointment will be automatically marked as completed by CareHD. So when I do that, and I go to my calendar, I can see that any appointment that's marked as completed will be grayed out. These appointments are not completed, these are. You cannot make use of the autocomplete feature through the Visits tab. Going through the patient's Visits tab is simply editing a SOAP note. Even if there is not a SOAP note yet, I can click Create SOAP Note. This is still considered editing mode, and it's giving me the prompt that a note is being created from the patient profile, charges will not be added. If I hit OK, you see that charges box is not present. That's because you cannot add charges through the Visits tab. So the recommended workflow is using the SOAP note screen by clicking on SOAP and one of the SOAP note screens to perform the action of adding charges. You can also have your front desk add charges in it manually if that's the case. So it's always recommended to use one of the SOAP note screen. You should not go through the Visits tab as your daily workflow as for inputting notes. Again, you cannot add charges through the Visits tab. So the autocomplete feature, again, will automatically mark the appointment as completed once the SOAP note and the charges are entered on the same day as the appointment. I'm going to turn off autocomplete so I can show you what it would look like to manually complete appointments. Let's say this appointment has been arrived. I'm on the SOAP note, some charges pulled over. I'm going to reuse last note and submit. So now on my home screen, you can see that the patient is in a green color, which is just a treated status. It will be in green and there'll be this dollar icon. That does not mean that you have to collect money from the patient. It's just simply indicating a treated status. A patient may not pay every visit. They may pay on a monthly basis or a prepaid basis. So please keep in mind the dollar sign does not mean collect money from the patient. It's just the patient's ready to be checked out, meaning you need to review, are those requirements in for the patient, and do you need to schedule the patient for another appointment? I can quickly see this sticky note icon, meaning a SOAP note has been completed. And if I hover over it, it'll tell me SOAP complete. So if I'm looking for the requirements, okay, I can see the SOAP note. If I scroll over, I can see anything on the current day is in green. This is the current appointment, today's appointment. This is the charges that were added today. So at a quick glance, I can see charges were added, the SOAP note was added, there was an appointment, I see it here and here. Great, those requirements have been made. I can also scroll up a little bit. Okay, does the patient have upcoming appointments? Great, they do. Then they're good to go. Do I need to collect? Yes or no? Do I need to schedule them for another appointment? I can quickly see that information here. Regarding the charges, I can see a snapshot here. If I click into the transaction snapshot, it will take me to the ledger where I can see furthermore what those charges were or edit if I need to. I can manually complete the appointment via this button or the drop-down menu and hit completed. So that's how you can manually mark an appointment as completed. Also in regard to the concept of a complete appointment is incomplete appointments. After a date has passed, any appointment on the calendar that has not been marked as completed will show in your incomplete queue. This is my test office, so I have a high number of incomplete appointments, but an office should never have a high number of incomplete appointments. This would indicate to us an issue in a workflow or an issue in an understanding in the system. Do you know that there's an autocomplete feature? If you don't want to use the autocomplete, that's perfectly fine. Then is your staff marking appointments as completed? Again, this is a check and balance system. So your incomplete appointments queue is showing me a check and balance. I have an issue. I shouldn't have a large queue. Your incomplete queue should be monitored daily or weekly. If I click into my incomplete queue, you'll see that it is broken up by provider. I can collapse providers that I don't want to see. When I say provider, I am referring to the calendar. Some offices have each calendar named by the provider, or some say SoftWave, adjustments, new patients. So if I'm saying provider, I'm really referring to the calendar that the appointment was scheduled under. So you can collapse, like I said, the different calendars that I don't want to see. So maybe if I am, Dr. Albus, I'm only working off of my incomplete queue. You can see here the patient's name, the type of appointment, and the date. To clear your incomplete queue, you do need to make sure that you're going in and adding the necessary information, whether that be adding the charges or submitting a SOAP note or finalizing a SOAP note. So what do I do if I have appointments in my incomplete queue and I need to clean them up? The first and foremost is to always put in information that is missing. The first method is I can complete an appointment when I'm putting in the charges for a back date by linking the appointment with the charges. So I'm going to use this patient as an example, and I am missing a SOAP note, so I need to do that. And I'm also missing charges for that 10/8 appointment. So I'm going to go to new transaction. I'm immediately going to backdate this transaction to match the date of the appointment. I'm going to put in my charges and then select the appointment that these charges are related to. So I want to make sure that my 10/8 and my 10/8 match. Do you want to mark the above appointment as completed? I would say yes. Again, only mark yes once we have all the necessary information in. Submit. And so now that appointment, as you can see, it just marked as completed, and it will leave my incomplete queue. Additionally, I can manually mark an appointment as completed. You can also go to that day on the calendar and manually mark an appointment as completed if that is how you wish to do so. So if I need to go through and clean up Monday and make sure everyone on Monday is taken care of, I can see this appointment is completed because it's grayed out. This one is not. This one is not. So, and I can rectify those as I need to. But your incomplete queue is that check and balance in, are you marking appointments as completed? Are you putting in necessary information? So again, we suggest that you monitor your incomplete queue often, daily, if at the most weekly. Don't let your incomplete queue build up. The concept of a completed appointment is there to cover you. Do you have that necessary information for the patient? Of course, your office may require other things that are required for the appointment, but those are the base standards. The appointment on the calendar, so there's a record, charges on the ledger, so that there's a record of what services the patient received, and a SOAP note, so that there's a note that dictates what happened with the patient that day. As you get into the flow, marking appointments as completed manually or using the autocomplete feature is quick and painless. It'll just help keep your office on top of all the patients that you're seeing on a daily basis.